the objects that were shot down were in the civilian airspace, kind of flying low elevation, and so it was shot down. They were shot down because of we were taking abundance of caution. We wanted to make sure Americans were safe. We wanted to make sure that the civilian aircraft flying above in our airspace were safe, and that's why they were taken down. The three objects, as you all know, they are now being recovered. The weather conditions have prevented for the Pentagon to go out there and get those objects, but we're going to continue to try. We're going to continue to be vigilant on getting the debris. But in the meantime, as you just mentioned, the benign statement, the intelligence community did say that they are considering or looking at this to be potentially benign. But of course, we want to make sure that we get the objects so we can actually, or the debris from the objects, just to be more clear, so we can get a sense of what the objects were for certain.
I know that the teams haven't been able to get to the debris yet. Have the salvage teams been able to locate the debris?
That's a really good question. I would have to refer you to the Pentagon on this, on the specifics, if they've been able to locate it. What we know is the weather conditions have indeed prevented them in these three locations.
These objects are benign. Is there any concern that there was an overreaction in terms of shooting them down?
So I'm not gonna get ahead. I'm not gonna get ahead of what what is actually the final word on this. What we know is the intelligence community is considering as a leading explanation that these could be tied to commercial or research entities and benign. That is something that the intelligence community has looked into. But again, we got to get the debris from the objects that we're trying to we're trying to get out of the locations.
Have any private companies or research institutes contacted the U.S. government in any form to say that one of their flying objects is missing?
No, we have not yet been contacted.
Has the U.S. done anything to reach out to companies that could operate similar sized flying objects either here in the U.S. or elsewhere?
I don't have anything to preview or report on that.
I guess there's the sense that, if this belongs to somebody, if it is benign, obviously it remains a possibility. You'll know more when you find this in the Yukon and elsewhere. But for those who may fear legal liability, let's say, that they were flying in civilian airspace or the like, what do you say to anybody out there who is watching this conversation and may be hesitant to come forward to the U.S. government to say, it's our object that is missing?
It's a good question. Again, I don't want to get ahead of the military or the intelligence community as they're trying to really figure out what these objects are. Again,
this might seem like a silly question, but does debris actually exist? Is the U.S. government confident that there is debris from these objects, or were they destroyed in the process of being taken down?
From what I understand, and the Department of Defense and the Pentagon clearly would know more specifics on this, there is debris out there, and we're trying to have an intensive operation to get that debris from the objects. But I would refer you directly to the Pentagon.
The National Weather Service website here says that 900 the weather balloons are released around the world from 900 locations twice a day, every single day of the year, including 92 released by the National Weather Service in the U.S. That they fly for at least 2 hours a day, drift as far as 125 miles, and cover and rise up to 100,000 feet above the ground. If it turns out, as it looks like, that the president and Mr. Trudeau sent Top Gun fighters to blow weather balloons out of the sky, does the president regret that, and is he embarrassed by that?
I'm not going to get ahead of what of any final decision. We just don't know yet. We actually just don't know. And as I've said, as my colleague has said from NSC, it is in consideration that could be the leading explanation here. Again,
is the president embarrassed by that? The idea that you would take hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment?
Michael, let me answer the question. I don't think the president should be embarrassed, right, by the fact that he took action to make sure that our airspace, civilian airspace, was safe. I don't think that he should.
I'm sorry.
No,
I
but I'm answering the question. I am answering the question, right? The president took action because we did see that these objects were in the airspace of civilian airspace, and so to protect the civilian airspace, the president took action. And he took recommendation by the Pentagon to take that action. I don't want to get ahead of what will be the final analysis, right, of what the objects may have been or may not have been. So don't want to get into a hypothetical here. But look, this is the president does everything that he can, everything in his power, right, to defend, to track, and to protect our airspace. And that's what you should glean from what the actions that this president took.
And then one follow-up, which is there's a lot of criticism out there that what really drove the president's decisions in the latter three shoot-downs was an overreaction, a political overreaction to the criticism that he took on the Chinese spy balloon for waiting too long. In other words, that he was criticized for waiting too long in the first balloon, and so the reaction, the overreaction, the critics would say, is that he moved too quickly to shoot down the other ones before even knowing obviously what they were. How do you guys respond to that?
I'll respond to it this way. Two different things, right? The Chinese surveillance balloon, completely different operation, if you will, a complete different situation, if you will. It was a balloon, as you all know, that was a Chinese surveillance balloon. The president's number one thing was to make sure that we kept American civilians safe. He took recommendations from the Pentagon, who said that we should follow the path. And he agreed, they followed the path, but he also said the moment that they can to shoot it down, and that's what occurred. But let's remember what happened while the balloon was on its path. We were able to collect data from it. We were able to protect our security data on the ground and learn from the Chinese surveillance balloon. That's what we were able to do. And when it got over an area where it was safe, where we were able to collect, because we are collecting the data that's on the debris, right, that's on the ocean floor, and learning more about its capabilities. And when we were able to do that, they shot it down. And so we're going to learn a lot more because of the action that the president took and because of the action that the Pentagon took, right, with the recommendation that they provided with the president. So that's a different scenario. It's not the same. And as I just mentioned, with the objects, they were in civilian airspace. So the president took action to protect our civilian airspace. The elevation was a little bit lower, and he took that action.
They were in the civilian airspace with
two different
dozens, scores of balloons that are also in the civilian airspace every day.
I hear you, and I know that you just read me the national weather data or numbers of balloons. I get that. I don't know those numbers. That's the first time that I'm hearing about them. I appreciate you sharing it with all of us. But what I'm telling you is what I can give you from our vantage point, how we move forward. The Chinese surveillance balloon was very, very different than what we saw with these three objects.